She was 14 years old when she finally broke him. Not with tears. Not with pleading. Not with the kind of dramatic confrontation that makes for easy stories. She broke him with a single sentence, delivered in his own study, her voice steady as steel. "I know who my real father was. And I know you've been lying to me for 4 years." Victor Ashworth stood behind his desk, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind him like a crown he no longer deserved. His hands, which had signed documents worth billions, which had destroyed companies and ended careers, hung useless at his sides. Zora held a folder. Manila. Worn at the edges. He recognized it immediately. It was from his own safe, the one he thought only he could access. "You found his name," Victor said. "Not a question. I found everything. The investigation you ran when I first came here. The report about who he was. The family he had in Senegal." Her voice cracked, just barely. "The family I could have known about. Should have known about. Zora. Don't." She held up her hand, and the gesture was so familiar, so like his own, that it wounded him. "Don't explain. Don't justify. Just tell me one thing." He waited. "Did you keep this from me to protect me? Or to keep me for yourself?" The question hung in the air between them. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. The clock on his desk ticked. The city continued its indifferent rhythm while everything Victor had built with this child trembled on the edge of collapse. He opened his mouth to answer. "But first, you need to understand how they got here. How the most dangerous man in America came to stand helpless before a teenage girl. How she found him, or how he found her, and how neither of them was ever the same. 4 years earlier." The call came on a Thursday, which Victor would later find significant. Thursdays were his acquisition days, the day he reviewed potential targets, identified weaknesses, planned attacks. Thursdays were when he was most himself, focused, ruthless, utterly in control. His assistant's voice came through the intercom at 9:47 a.m. "Mr. Ashworth, there's a Raymond Cross on line 2. He says it's urgent." Raymond Cross was his lawyer. His fixer. The man who knew where every body was buried because he had helped bury most of them. Raymond never called with good news, but he also never called with anything Victor couldn't handle. This time was different. "There's been an accident," Raymond said without preamble. "A charter plane went down over the Atlantic 3 days ago. Passenger manifest was just confirmed." Victor set down his pen. "Who?" "Diana." The name landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through decades of carefully constructed numbness. Diana. His younger sister. The woman who had looked him in the eye 20 years ago and called him everything he secretly knew himself to be. The woman who had walked away from the family fortune and never looked back. Survivors? The word came out flat, professional. As if he were asking about a shipping delay. None. Victor was quiet. He should feel something, he knew. Grief. Loss. The weight of words never spoken and apologies never made. Instead, he felt only the familiar emptiness that had replaced emotion somewhere in his 30s. "There's something else." Raymond's voice carried an unusual hesitation. Diana had a daughter. The emptiness fractured. What? A girl. 10 years old. Born in Senegal, raised in various countries where Diana was working. The child wasn't on the plane. Diana had sent her ahead to a safe house in Dakar before the crash. She's currently being held by local authorities, waiting for next of kin. Why wasn't I informed Diana had a child? Because Diana didn't inform anyone. The birth wasn't registered in any database we monitor. She kept the girl completely off the grid. Raymond paused. Victor, you're the child's only living relative. The authorities are asking what you want to do. Victor turned to face the window. 57 floors below, Manhattan continued its endless motion, cars, people, lives being lived by those who had not just learned they had a niece. A blood relative. A complication he had never anticipated. What are my options? You could decline guardianship. The child would enter the system. Foster care initially, probably in Senegal, though she has dual citizenship through Diana's American status. And nothing. That's the option if you want to walk away. Walk away. It was what Victor did best. Walk away from deals that didn't serve him. Walk away from relationships that demanded more than he could give. Walk away from his sister 20 years ago when she needed him most. Send me her photograph. Victor. Send me her photograph. Now. The image arrived 30 seconds later. She was small. That was his first impression. Small and dark-skinned, with hair gathered in twists and eyes that looked directly at the camera with an expression that Victor recognized immediately. Wariness. Assessment. The look of someone who had learned early that the world was not safe. Diana's eyes. His mother's eyes. Looking out from a child's face. Make the arrangements, Victor heard himself say. Bring her here. Are you sure? A child is. I'm aware of what a child is. Make the arrangements. He ended the call and stared at the photograph for a long time. He did not know, in that moment, that he had just made the most important decision of his life. He did not know that this small, wary girl would dismantle everything he thought he understood about himself. He only knew that she was an Ashworth. And despite everything he had become, that still meant something. If you're already feeling the weight of what's about to unfold, make sure you're subscribed to Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson. Trust me, this is only the beginning. She arrived on a Tuesday, 11 days later. Victor had prepared extensively. He had converted a guest room into a child's bedroom, hiring designers who specialized in spaces for young people. He had interviewed 17 nanny candidates before selecting Gloria, a woman with 30 years of experience and references from 3 ambassadors. He had purchased clothes, toys, books, everything the internet suggested a 10-year-old girl might need. What he had not prepared for was the girl herself. She emerged from the elevator flanked by a social worker and 2 members of his security team. She wore clothes that were clean but worn, a backpack clutched against her chest like a shield. Her hair was neat but starting to unravel at the edges, small beads clicking softly when she moved. And she was looking at him. Not with fear. Not with hope. Not with any of the emotions he might have expected from an orphan child meeting her only remaining family for the first time. She was looking at him the way he looked at acquisition targets. Assessing value. Identifying weakness. Calculating risk. Mr. Ashworth. The social worker, a tired woman named Chen who had flown from Senegal to oversee the transfer, stepped forward. This is Zora. Zora, this is your Uncle Victor. Zora. Victor turned the name over in his mind. It was literary, Zora Neale Hurston, the writer. Diana had always loved books. Hello, Zora. He kept his voice neutral. Controlled. Welcome to your new home. The child said nothing. She hasn't spoken much since the accident, Chen explained quietly. The trauma counselors say it's normal. Give her time. I understand. The paperwork is complete. My contact information is in the folder if you have any questions during the transition period. Chen knelt down to Zora's level. You're going to be okay here. Your uncle will take care of you. Still nothing. Chen stood, exchanged final words with Gloria, and departed. The penthouse fell silent except for the soft hum of climate control and the distant pulse of the city below. Victor stood in his own foyer, acutely aware that he had no idea what to do next. Gloria will show you to your room, he said finally. You must be tired from traveling. Zora's eyes moved from his face to the marble floors, the soaring ceilings, the art on the walls. Then back to him. She still didn't speak. Gloria stepped forward with a practiced smile. Come along, dear. Your room has a view of the park. And there's a bathroom all your own. No. It was the first word Victor heard her say. Quiet. Firm. Accented in a way that blended French and something else, Wolof, he would later learn. Gloria blinked. No. I will stay here. Zora pointed to a spot near the windows, away from all of them but with clear sight lines to every entrance. I will watch first. Gloria looked at Victor helplessly. This was not in any of her protocols. Victor should have insisted on routine. Should have established authority. Should have made clear from the beginning that this was his home and his rules applied. Instead, he found himself nodding. Let her watch. She can explore when she's ready. Something flickered in Zora's expression. Not gratitude. Not trust. Just acknowledgement, one wary creature recognizing another. She walked to her chosen spot, sat cross-legged on the floor, and began to observe. She did not speak again for 3 days. Victor tried to maintain his normal routine, but the child's presence disrupted everything. He would emerge from his study to find her sitting in unexpected places, the kitchen floor, a corner of the living room, once inside a closet with the door cracked open just enough to see out. She ate what was placed in front of her, but only after watching others eat first. She slept in her room, but Gloria reported finding her several times curled in corners or under furniture, as if the bed was too exposed. She was always watching. Victor, who had built an empire on the ability to read people, found himself being read. She tracked his movements through the penthouse. She noted his patterns, when he woke, when he worked, when he ate, when he retreated to his study. She was mapping him the way a prey animal maps its predator. Or perhaps the reverse. She's not adjusting, Gloria reported on the 4th morning. She won't engage with any of the activities I've planned. She won't play with the toys. She won't respond to conversation. Is she eating? Yes. Sleeping? In her own way. Then she's surviving. Give her time. Mr. Ashworth, children need structure. Routine. Without proper engagement. She's 10 years old. Her mother just died. Her entire world has been destroyed. Victor's voice was flat, but something underneath it had edges. Perhaps she needs to feel safe before she needs routine. Gloria left, dissatisfied. Victor turned back to his work, but found he could not concentrate. He thought about Diana. About the last real conversation they had, 20 years ago, in the house where they both grew up. She had been 22, about to leave for graduate school in international development. He had been 26, already neck-deep in the family business, already becoming the man their father wanted him to be. Come with me, she had said. Get out of this. You're not like him yet. You don't have to become what he's making you. This is who I am. No. This is who you're choosing to be. There's a difference. He had laughed at her. Actually laughed, dismissive and cruel. Save your idealism for someone who hasn't seen how the world actually works. People like us don't get to pretend we're good. Diana's face had closed. He watched it happen, the hope draining away, replaced by something that looked like grief. You're wrong, she had said quietly. People like us are the only ones who get to choose. Because we have the resources to be anything we want. You're choosing this, Victor. Remember that. She had left the next morning. They spoke a handful of times over the following years, holidays, their mother's death, their father's death. But something had broken between them that night. Something Victor had never tried to repair. Now she was dead. And she had left him her daughter. On the 5th day, Zora spoke. Victor was in his study, reviewing documents for an acquisition that no longer seemed important. It was past midnight. The penthouse was dark except for his desk lamp and the glow of the city beyond his windows. She appeared in the doorway without sound. He only noticed her because he had trained himself to notice movement, anywhere in his peripheral vision. "You should be asleep," he said without looking up. "You burned them." Her voice was quiet but clear. "The photographs. The ones of my mother when she was young. They were in a box in the room with the locked cabinet. You burned them." Victor set down his pen. "How do you know that?" "I found the ashes. In the fireplace in that room." Photo paper leaves a different kind of ash than regular paper. There were small pieces that didn't burn completely. She stepped into the study, her bare feet silent on the carpet. They had her face on them. I could see her eyes in one piece. Victor was quiet for a long moment. "You've been exploring." "I needed to learn the space. The room with the locked cabinet is private." The lock was easy. No apology. No shame. Just fact. Victor studied the child in front of him. Small. Dark. Utterly unafraid. She had broken into his private space, discovered evidence of his attempt to destroy the past, and confronted him with it as if she had every right. Perhaps she did. "I burned them," he said finally, "because looking at them was difficult." "Because you missed her?" "Because I failed her." Zora tilted her head, considering this. "How did you fail her?" The question was so direct, so stripped of social convention, that Victor found himself answering honestly. "She asked me to be better. I chose not to be. She left. We never reconciled." He paused. "When I look at photographs of who she was, I remember who I could have been. That is difficult." "So you destroyed them?" "Yes. That was stupid." Victor blinked. "Those photographs weren't just of who she was," Zora continued. "They were of who she was becoming. They were part of her story. Now they're gone, and you can't get them back." "I know. I don't have very many photographs of her. Just what she kept with her. Now there are fewer because you burned the rest." The accusation landed like a blow. Victor had not considered that the photographs belonged to Zora as much as they had belonged to him. He had thought only of his own pain, his own avoidance. "I'm sorry." The words came out rusty. Unpracticed. "I wasn't thinking of you when I did it." "You weren't thinking of anyone except yourself." "No. I wasn't." Zora was quiet, studying him with those ancient eyes. "My mother said you were selfish. She said you only cared about what you could control, and when something was too painful to control, you destroyed it instead of feeling it. Your mother was right. But she also said," Zora stopped. Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the armor, quickly sealed. "She said you weren't always like that. She said something happened to you. Something that made you stop feeling things." Victor thought about telling her. About the night their father had put a gun in his 17-year-old hand and told him to prove he was worthy of the family name. About what he had done. About what he had buried so deep inside himself that he sometimes forgot it was there. But she was 10 years old. And some truths were too heavy for children. "Something did happen," he said instead. "A long time ago. It doesn't excuse anything." "I know it doesn't." Zora moved further into the study, her eyes scanning the bookshelves, the documents on his desk, the locked cabinet in the corner. "I just wanted to understand." "Do you? Understand?" "No." She looked back at him. But I will. Eventually. It sounded like a promise. Or perhaps a threat. The story started the following week. Victor never asked for them. Never prompted or encouraged. One evening, Zora simply began speaking, and he learned to listen. We lived in a camp once. Near the border. She was curled in the chair across from his desk, the one she had claimed as her own. It was mostly women and children. The men had been taken or killed or had gone to fight. Mama worked in the medical tent during the day and taught reading at night. Victor set down his pen. How long were you there? 7 months. Until the soldiers came too close and we had to move. Zora's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were describing a school field trip. Mama said the camp wasn't safe anymore. She said sometimes you have to leave a place before it becomes a grave. The word sent ice through Victor's chest. What had Diana's life been like, that her child spoke of graves so casually? Where did you go after? Another camp. Then a city. Then another camp. Then a village where we stayed with a woman named Fatou who had lost all her children to the war. Zora paused. Mama helped her start a school. I was her first student. How many places did you live? Zora counted silently on her fingers. 11. 12 if you count the boat. What boat? The one that took us from Libya to Italy. We were on it for 4 days. 3 people died. She said it without emotion, as if reporting weather. Mama said to remember their names so someone would. But I forgot one. The old woman who died on the 3rd night. I can't remember what she was called. Victor did not know what to say. His own childhood had been difficult. A cold father, impossible expectations, violence disguised as discipline, but it had been safe. He had always had food, shelter, stability. This child had crossed oceans in boats where people died. You don't have to talk about these things, he said finally. If they're painful. They're not painful. They're just true. Zora tilted her head. Mama said that talking about true things keeps them from becoming monsters. If you lock them inside, they grow bigger in the dark. Your mother was very wise. She was also very tired. All the time. She pretended not to be, but I could see. Zora's voice softened almost imperceptibly. She slept with one eye open. Even when we were in safe places. Even when there was no danger. She never really rested. Victor thought about his sister. The laughing girl who had believed in goodness, who had wanted to save the world. What had 20 years of that world done to her? I want to know more, he said. About her life. About yours. If you're willing to tell me. Zora studied him for a long moment. Why? You didn't care before. You didn't even know I existed. I should have known. I should have stayed in contact with her. I should have been there. Victor forced himself to hold the child's gaze. I can't change what I didn't do. But I'm here now. And I want to understand. Understanding won't bring her back. No. It won't. Zora was quiet. Then, so softly he almost missed it. Sometimes she talked about you. Late at night when she thought I was asleep. She would look at old letters and cry. Something twisted in Victor's chest. She kept my letters. The ones from before you stopped writing. She read them over and over. She said they were from a different person. Someone who disappeared a long time ago. The pain was unexpected. Sharp. Real. Victor had spent decades numbing himself to emotion, and now it was breaking through cracks he didn't know existed. I stopped writing because I didn't know what to say. I had become someone she wouldn't recognize. Someone she would despise. She didn't despise you. Zora's voice was firm. She was sad about you. That's different. Is it? Despising means you've given up on someone. Sadness means you're still hoping they'll change. Victor absorbed this. A 10-year-old child, explaining his sister's heart to him. She hoped I would change. I don't know. Maybe. She never said. Zora uncurled from the chair and stood. I'm tired now. I'm going to sleep. She left before he could respond. Victor sat alone in his study, surrounded by documents worth more money than most people would see in a lifetime, and felt poorer than he ever had before. Victor began researching Diana's life. Not through his usual channels, private investigators, intelligence assets, the network of information brokers he maintained, but through the organization she had worked for. He made calls. He requested records. He spoke to people who had known her. What he learned kept him awake at night. Diana had spent 20 years in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Refugee camps in Kenya, Sudan, Syria. Conflict zones where aid workers were targets. Places where death was ordinary and survival was extraordinary. She had been shot at twice. She had contracted malaria 3 times. She had once walked 40 miles through desert to escort a group of orphans to safety when their transport was destroyed. And through all of it, she had raised a child. She was remarkable, said a woman named Adele, who had worked with Diana for 12 years. Victor had tracked her down in Geneva. Absolutely fearless. But not reckless, she always calculated the risks. She just decided that some things were worth the risk. Her daughter, Victor said. Zora. She brought her everywhere. There was nowhere safe to leave her. No family that Diana trusted. So yes, Zora came with us. She grew up in camps and villages and temporary shelters. She saw things no child should see. Adele's voice softened. But Diana protected her. Fiercely. She would have died for that child. She did die, Victor said. Just not directly for her. A pause. We all wondered why she got on that plane. She wasn't supposed to be on it. She had sent Zora ahead, and she was supposed to follow on a later flight. But something changed at the last minute. What changed? I don't know. None of us do. But Diana made a choice, and now she's gone. Adele's voice hardened. What I do know is that she trusted you. Despite everything, she trusted you to take care of her daughter if something happened. She put your name on the emergency documents. Not anyone else's. Yours. Victor did not know what to say. Don't fail her, Adele continued. Don't fail that child. She's been through enough. The call ended. Victor sat in his study, holding the phone, understanding for the first time the weight of what Diana had entrusted to him. Now that you've seen the foundation being laid, the real transformation is about to begin. If you're invested in where this goes, drop a comment telling me what you think will happen next. And don't forget to subscribe to Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson because this is where everything changes. 1 month in, Zora asked the question that broke something open. They were in the kitchen. Victor had dismissed the chef that morning, another of his old habits crumbling. And was attempting to make breakfast himself. Eggs. He had chosen eggs because they seemed simple. They were not simple. Zora watched him from her perch on a counter stool, her expression hovering between amusement and something else. Something older. Did you love her? She asked suddenly. My mother? Victor's hand stilled over the pan. The eggs were already burning. Of course I did. She was my sister. That's not what I asked. Zora's voice was patient, as if she were explaining something obvious to someone very slow. Siblings don't always love each other. Sometimes they hate each other. Sometimes they feel nothing. She paused. Did you love her? Really love her? The kitchen was very quiet. The eggs blackened and smoked. Victor did not move. Yes, he said finally. I loved her. She was the only person I ever. He stopped, surprised by what was trying to emerge. She was the only person who knew me before I became this. Before I turned into what I am now. What were you before? I don't know anymore. That's the problem. Victor turned off the burner, looking at the ruined eggs. I was 17 when I changed. When I chose to become what my father wanted me to be. Diana was 13. She watched it happen. She was the only one who mourned who I had been. What happened when you were 17? The question hung in the air. Victor thought about the gun in his hand. The man on his knees. His father's voice, cold and certain, this is how we protect what's ours. Something I can't take back, he said. Something that taught me to stop feeling things. Because feeling made me weak, and weakness was dangerous. Zora considered this. My mother felt things. She cried sometimes. She got angry. She laughed. A pause. She wasn't weak. Your mother was the strongest person I ever knew. Then maybe feeling things doesn't make you weak. Maybe it just makes you human. Victor looked at this child, 10 years old, raised in war zones, speaking truths that should have taken a lifetime to learn. When did you become so wise? When I had to be. She slid off the stool. The eggs are ruined. I'll make toast instead. She moved around the kitchen with a competence that seemed wrong in someone so young. She had clearly been taking care of herself for a long time. Victor watched her and felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Shame. He was feeling shame. I should have been there, he said. For your mother. For you. I should have known you existed. I should have. You should have done a lot of things. Zora did not look up from the toaster. But you didn't. The question is what you're going to do now. What do you want me to do? She turned then, meeting his eyes. I want you to try. That's all. Just try to be something different than what you've been. And if I fail? Then try again. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. That's what Mama always said. Failing isn't the problem. Stopping is the problem. Victor thought about all the things he had stopped. Stopped hoping. Stopped caring. Stopped believing he could be anything other than what he had become. I'll try, he said. Good. Zora turned back to the toaster. Start by learning to cook eggs without burning them. Victor's first real attempts at connection were disasters. He bought her things. Expensive things. A designer wardrobe she would not touch. A room full of toys she ignored. Electronics that gathered dust. He was doing what he knew, spending money, acquiring solutions, throwing resources at problems. It did not work. He hired specialists. Tutors, therapists, activities coordinators. Zora sat through sessions in stony silence, answering questions in monosyllables, her eyes tracking the clock until the hour was over. She's resistant to treatment, the child psychologist reported after the third failed session. She's experienced significant trauma, but she's not willing to process it in a clinical setting. She needs time. How much time? That's not something I can predict. Months. Possibly years. Victor paid the bill and did not schedule another appointment. Gloria quit after 6 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Ashworth, she said, her professional composure cracking at the edges. I've worked with difficult children before. I've never encountered anything like this. She's not disobedient, she simply doesn't acknowledge that the rules apply to her. She appears and disappears at will. She asks questions that no child should think to ask. And she watches. Constantly. It's like being observed by someone much older. Someone who is deciding whether to trust you or destroy you. That seems dramatic. Perhaps. But I can't continue. Gloria gathered her things. I wish you luck. You're going to need it. After she left, Victor stood alone in his penthouse and realized he had no one between himself and this child. No buffer. No intermediary. No employee to handle the parts of life he had always outsourced. For the first time in decades, Victor Ashworth would have to actually be present. The first meal he cooked entirely himself was pasta. He chose pasta because he remembered his mother making it, long ago, before she faded into the background of his father's empire. Simple pasta with tomato sauce from a jar. Even he could not ruin that. He ruined it. The pasta was overcooked, the sauce burnt, the bread he attempted to toast caught fire briefly before he managed to extinguish it. The kitchen looked like a disaster zone. Zora emerged from wherever she had been hiding and surveyed the damage. We could order delivery, Victor said, defeated. No. She walked to the counter and picked up a limp strand of pasta, examining it. We eat this. It's terrible. I've eaten worse. She fixed him with that ancient gaze. In the camps, we ate what was available. Sometimes it was rotten. Sometimes it was barely food at all. You learn not to waste things. She found 2 plates, served the ruined pasta, and sat down at the kitchen island. After a moment, Victor joined her. They ate in silence. The pasta was indeed terrible, mushy, flavorless, somehow both burnt and undercooked. But Zora finished every bite, and Victor forced himself to do the same. Tomorrow, she said when they were done, I'll show you how to cook rice. It's harder to ruin. You know how to cook? Mama taught me. She said everyone should know how to feed themselves. A pause. Also, the food in the camps was bad. We made our own when we could. Victor nodded slowly. Teach me. Okay. It was a small thing. A single word. But something shifted between them in that moment, some invisible barrier becoming slightly more permeable. That night, for the first time since she arrived, Zora did not watch him from across the room. She sat beside him, in the study, reading a book she had found somewhere, while he pretended to work. The silence between them felt different. Almost comfortable. The nightmares started 2 weeks later. Or perhaps they had been happening all along, and Victor had simply not been paying attention. He was working late, he was always working late now, when he heard the screaming. It was not a child's scream. It was the sound of someone being torn apart, a raw animal howl that sent Victor sprinting through hallways he usually walked. He found her tangled in sheets, thrashing, crying out in French, in Wolof, in languages he couldn't identify. Her eyes were open but unseeing, trapped in some memory he could not access. Zora. He knelt beside the bed, afraid to touch her, afraid of making it worse. Zora, wake up. You're safe. You're here. You're safe. She didn't hear him. She kept screaming, kept fighting invisible enemies, kept pleading with someone who wasn't there. Victor did not know what to do. His usual tools, money, power, intimidation, were useless here. All he had was his presence and his voice. So he kept talking. You're in New York. You're in my home. No one can hurt you here. I won't let them. I promise. I won't let anyone hurt you. He didn't know how long he talked. Minutes. Hours. At some point, his hand found hers, and she gripped it with a strength that seemed impossible for someone so small. Slowly, the screaming subsided. The thrashing stilled. Her breathing evened out. She looked at him. Really looked, her eyes focusing on the present. They came to the camp, she whispered. The men with guns. They took the other children. Mama hid me in a barrel. She said don't make a sound. Don't move no matter what. What happened? I heard them. The children. Crying. Then not crying. Zora's voice was flat, disconnected from the horror of the words. Mama didn't come for 3 days. I stayed in the barrel. I didn't make a sound. Victor felt something collapse inside him. This child, 7 years old at the time, hiding in darkness while other children were taken or killed, waiting alone for days because her mother couldn't reach her. You survived, he said. You did exactly what your mother told you. I was supposed to be quiet. To stay hidden. That was the rule. Her grip on his hand tightened. But sometimes I hear them. The crying. The ones I couldn't help. I was right there and I couldn't help them. You were 7 years old. Old enough to know what was happening. Too young to stop it. Zora was quiet for a moment. Then, so softly he almost missed it, do you hear them? The people you couldn't save? Victor thought about the man his father had made him kill. About the ones who had followed, some deserving, some simply in the way. About the lives he had destroyed through business, through leverage, through the casual application of power. I hear different sounds, he said finally. But yes. I hear them. How do you make them stop? I don't know. I've been trying to drown them out my entire life. It doesn't work. Zora considered this. Mama said the sounds never stop. But they can get quieter. If you let yourself hear them instead of fighting. Your mother was braver than me. Maybe. Zora released his hand and pulled the blankets around herself. Stay. Until I fall asleep. It was not a request. It was a command. Victor stayed. He sat on the floor beside her bed, his back against the wall, listening to her breathing gradually deepen and slow. In the morning, when she woke, he was still there. His neck ached. His legs were numb. He had not slept at all. You stayed, she said. I said I would. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, for the first time since she arrived, she smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. Okay, she said. You can teach me about business when I'm older. What? That's what you know, right? Business. Strategy. How to make people do what you want. She sat up in bed. Mama knew how to survive. You know how to win. I want to learn both. Why? Because I never want to hide in a barrel again. I never want to be quiet while other children cry. Her voice hardened. I want to be strong enough to help them. And sometimes being strong means being dangerous. Victor looked at this child who had seen too much, who had lost too much, who was already calculating how to make sure it never happened again. He saw himself. 29 years ago, standing in front of his father, choosing to become a weapon. I'll teach you, he said. But not yet. First, you learn other things. How to be a child. How to trust. How to heal. That sounds weak. It's not. It's the foundation. Without it, everything else breaks. He stood, his joints protesting. You can't protect anyone if you're shattered inside. I learned that the hard way. I won't let you make the same mistake. Zora studied him with those ancient eyes. You're different than I expected. Different how? Mama said you were cold. But you're not cold. She tilted her head. You're sad. You've just been sad so long you forgot it was sadness. Victor did not know how to respond to that. Come on, he said instead. You promised to teach me to cook rice. They developed a routine over the following months. Mornings were for cooking lessons, Zora teaching Victor the basics she had learned in camps and villages across Africa, Victor slowly improving from disaster to merely bad. They ate breakfast together, even when the food was questionable. Days, Zora attended a small private school Victor had chosen for its flexibility and discretion. She did not make friends easily, but she earned respect. Her teachers reported that she was brilliant but unsettling. She asked questions they couldn't answer and challenged assumptions they hadn't known they held. Evenings were for stories. Zora told him about her mother's life, piece by piece, assembling a portrait of the sister Victor had lost. Diana delivering babies in a tent during a sandstorm. Diana talking down an armed checkpoint guard with nothing but calm authority. Diana crying quietly at night when she thought her daughter was asleep. In return, Victor told Zora about Diana as a child. Before the world broke her. Before Victor became someone she couldn't recognize. Stories of climbing trees in their family's estate, of building forts out of furniture, of the time Diana had convinced Victor to steal their father's cigars and they had both gotten sick trying to smoke them. She was happy then, Zora said after one of these stories. Before. She was. We both were. In the beginning. What happened? Our father happened. He saw something in me, potential for the business, he called it, and he started shaping me. By the time Diana was old enough to notice, I was already becoming someone else. Did you try to stop? No. Victor forced himself to be honest. I wanted his approval. I wanted to prove I was worthy. By the time I realized the cost, it was too late. It's never too late. Zora's voice was firm. Mama said that. No matter what you've done, you can always choose differently. You just have to actually choose. Your mother believed in redemption. She had to. Otherwise, what was the point of anything? Victor thought about that often in the weeks that followed. Redemption. The possibility of becoming something other than what he had been. He wasn't sure he believed it. But looking at Zora, this fierce, wounded, extraordinary child, he wanted to. The transformation did not happen in a single moment. It happened in accumulation. Small choices stacking upon small choices, each one imperceptible, until Victor looked back and could no longer recognize the path that had led him here. It happened the first time he left a meeting early because Zora had a school event. It happened when he hired a new assistant and found himself asking about her family instead of just her qualifications. It happened when a deal crossed his desk that would have been routine 3 years ago. The dismantling of a manufacturing company, the liquidation of its pension fund, and he found himself hesitating. The numbers were good. The strategy was sound. The outcome was inevitable. But he kept seeing faces. The workers who would lose their jobs. The families who would lose their security. The communities that would collapse when the factory closed. He had never seen faces before. He had only seen figures. You're distracted, his CFO observed during a strategy session. The Pemberton acquisition is straightforward. We've done this 100 times. How many jobs? Excuse me? How many jobs will be eliminated if we proceed as planned? The CFO checked his notes, clearly confused by the question. Approximately 3,000. Standard restructuring. 3,000. 3,000 people who would go home and tell their families that the future they had planned was gone. 3,000 lives disrupted by a signature on a document. Victor had disrupted far more than 3,000 lives in his career. He had never counted before. Table it, he said. Table it? Victor, the timeline. I said table it. I want alternative scenarios. Restructuring options that preserve employment. Partnership possibilities. Anything other than complete liquidation. The CFO stared at him as if he had started speaking another language. That will significantly reduce our returns. I'm aware. The board will have questions. The board can direct their questions to me. The meeting ended in confusion. Victor sat alone in the conference room afterward, looking out at the city he had conquered, wondering when conquest had started to feel so empty. That evening, he told Zora about the decision. She was 12 now, long-limbed and watchful, her hair in elaborate braids that she had learned to do herself. She listened without interrupting, another skill she had developed, the patience to let stories unfold at their own pace. "Why did you change your mind?" she asked when he finished. "I kept thinking about the families. The people behind the numbers. You never thought about them before?" "No. I trained myself not to." Zora considered this. Mama used to say that the most dangerous thing about powerful people is that they stop seeing other people as real. Everyone becomes a statistic. A resource. A problem to be solved. She paused. "She said that's what happened to you." She was right. "But you're changing it. You're choosing to see people again." "I'm trying." Zora smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still transformed her face. "That's all anyone can do. Try. If you're feeling the shift happening, the slow turning of a man who thought he was beyond redemption, you're exactly where I want you to be." Subscribe to Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson if you haven't already, because this story is about to take a turn that neither of them saw coming. The threat came without warning. Victor had grown complacent. That was the only explanation. He had allowed himself to focus on Zora, on the strange new life they were building together, and he had forgotten that power attracts enemies. That showing vulnerability is an invitation to attack. The photographs arrived on a Monday morning. Zora walking to school. Zora in the park with a book. Zora sleeping, photographed through a window with a telephoto lens. And a note, asterisk the girl for 50 million. You have 1 week, asterisk. Victor read the note 3 times. Then he made a phone call. "Raymond. My office. Now." By the time his lawyer arrived, Victor had already begun the process of identifying every possible source of the threat. Security footage. Staff backgrounds. Intelligence networks he had maintained for exactly this purpose. "Who knows about her?" he demanded when Raymond walked in. "Everyone, at this point. You enrolled her in school. You've been seen with her in public. The business community knows you have a ward. Who has motive?" Raymond spread his hands. "You've made enemies, Victor. Hundreds of them. Anyone you've outmaneuvered, anyone you've destroyed, anyone who lost money because of your decisions. The list is long. Then we work through it. Every name. Every possibility." The investigation took 72 hours. The source was a consortium of smaller players Victor had crushed over the years. Businessmen who had lost fortunes, executives who had lost positions, families who had lost legacies. They had pooled resources, hired professionals, and identified what they believed was Victor's weakness. They were right. Zora was his weakness. But they had miscalculated what that weakness would make him do. Victor handled the situation personally. Not the violence, he had people for that, but the strategy, the execution, the systematic dismantling of every person and organization involved. Assets seized. Accounts frozen. Evidence delivered to authorities for those who had broken laws. And for those who had threatened his daughter, because that was what she was now, his daughter in every way that mattered, more permanent solutions. It took 6 days. When it was over, Victor returned to the penthouse exhausted, his hands clean but his conscience marked with new stains. He found Zora waiting in his study, her expression unreadable. "It's done," he said. "I know. I heard you on the phone." She didn't move from her chair. "The man who organized it. The one you called Hendrix. What happened to him?" Victor hesitated. He had tried to shield her from the details, but she had heard more than he intended. "He won't threaten anyone again." "Is he dead?" The question was calm. Clinical. The question of someone who had seen death before and had made peace with its existence. "Yes." Zora nodded slowly. "Did he deserve it?" "He threatened to take you. To hurt you. To use you as leverage against me." Victor's voice was steady, but something underneath it trembled. "In my world, that deserves the most severe response possible." "Your world?" Zora tilted her head. "Is that the world you're building for me?" The question cut deeper than any accusation could have. Victor sank into his chair, suddenly exhausted beyond words. "I don't know how to protect you without becoming the thing I'm trying to change. I don't know how to keep you safe without using the tools I spent decades sharpening." He looked at her helplessly. "Tell me what to do." "I can't tell you that. It's your choice." Zora uncurled from her chair and walked to stand before him. "But I can tell you what Mama would have said." "What?" "She would have said that violence is sometimes necessary, but it should never be easy. The moment it becomes easy, you've lost something you can't get back." Zora's eyes held his. "Was it easy?" Victor thought about Hendrix. About the fear in the man's eyes when he realized what was coming. About the cold satisfaction Victor had felt watching his enemy's world collapse. "No," he said. "It wasn't easy. But it wasn't as hard as it should have been." "Then you haven't lost yourself yet." Zora's hand found his shoulder, a rare gesture of physical affection. "You just need to keep paying attention. Keep noticing when it starts to feel normal." "When did you become so wise?" "When I had to be." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We both know what it's like to do terrible things to survive. The difference between us and the people who hurt us is that we remember it's terrible. We don't pretend it's good." Victor reached up and covered her hand with his own. "I would do it again," he said quietly. "If anyone threatened you, I would burn the entire world down." "I know." Zora's voice was soft. "That's why I need you to be careful. Because I don't want to be the reason you lose yourself completely." The years that followed were complicated. Victor continued his transformation, but it was not linear. Some days, he was the man he was becoming, thoughtful, present, conscious of the impact of his choices. Other days, the old patterns reasserted themselves, and he found himself reaching for familiar tools of intimidation and destruction. Zora was his compass. Not because she judged him, but because she witnessed him. Her presence made it impossible to pretend that his choices existed in a vacuum. She turned 13. Then 14. She grew into her height, her voice deepened, her questions became sharper. She challenged everything, his business practices, his relationships, his assumptions about power and morality. "You still own companies that exploit workers in developing countries," she observed one evening, reading through a report she had found on his desk. "The textile factories in Bangladesh. The mining operations in Congo. Those are complex situations. The alternatives. The alternatives require you to make less money. That's not the same as having no alternatives." She set down the report. "You're choosing profit over people. You just don't want to admit it. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You just don't like the simplicity." She fixed him with those eyes, Diana's eyes, his mother's eyes. "You're not the worst person in your industry. But that's a low bar. You could be better. I'm trying. Try harder." It was not a comfortable relationship. It was not the easy affection of television families. But it was honest. And honesty, Victor was learning, was worth more than comfort. He divested from the worst of his holdings. He improved conditions in factories he could not sell. He started a foundation, not for public relations, but for actual impact. Refugees. Education. The causes Diana had died serving. You named it after her, Zora said when she saw the foundation documents. The Diana Ashworth Foundation. She should be remembered for what she did. Not for being my sister. Zora was quiet for a moment. She would have hated that you're using money from the things she fought against to fund things she believed in. Probably. But she would have taken the money anyway. A small smile. She was practical like that. Use what you have to do what you can. She would have been proud of you. She would have been confused by you. Zora's smile widened. But maybe proud too. Eventually. The school incident happened when Zora was 13. Victor received the call from the principal at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday. His daughter, and the word no longer felt strange, had been involved in an altercation. Another student was injured. Victor needed to come immediately. He arrived to find Zora sitting outside the principal's office, her expression closed, her knuckles bruised and swollen. Across the waiting area, a boy roughly her age sat with an ice pack pressed to his face, his parents hovering protectively. Mr. Ashworth. The principal, a nervous man named Whitfield, emerged from his office. Thank you for coming so quickly. I'm afraid there's been a serious incident. What happened? Your daughter assaulted another student. Broke his nose. Victor looked at Zora. Her face revealed nothing. Did she explain why? She refuses to speak. The other student claims it was unprovoked. Victor turned to the injured boy and his parents. The father was red-faced, already preparing his outrage. The mother looked uncomfortable, unwilling to meet anyone's eyes. What exactly did your son say to my daughter before she hit him? The father sputtered. That's irrelevant. She attacked him without. Nothing is irrelevant. What did he say? Silence. The mother's discomfort deepened. The boy looked at the floor. Victor waited. He had learned patience from Zora, the willingness to let silence do its work. Finally, the principal spoke. Several witnesses report that young Mr. Harrison made comments about African orphans, about charity cases, about, he cleared his throat, about your daughter's appearance. What specifically about her appearance? I don't think. What specifically? The principal swallowed. He allegedly said that she should go back to the jungle where she belonged. Among other things. Victor felt something cold and familiar settle into his bones. The old instincts, the ones he had been trying to suppress, rose to the surface. I see. Mr. Ashworth, regardless of the provocation, physical violence is unacceptable. School policy requires. School policy. Victor's voice was quiet, which made it more dangerous. Tell me about your school policy on racial harassment. On creating a hostile environment. On allowing students to be verbally attacked based on their background. That's a separate issue. It's the same issue. My daughter was attacked first. She simply responded in a way that left evidence. The father finally found his voice. Now see here. No. You see here. Victor turned to face the Harrisons directly. His expression had not changed, but something in his posture made the father take an involuntary step back. Your son racially harassed my daughter. She defended herself. If you want to make this a larger issue, I am fully prepared to pursue legal action for civil rights violations, public relations campaigns detailing exactly what kind of environment this school tolerates, and a personal investigation into your family's business practices that I suspect will reveal numerous irregularities." The room was very quiet. "Or," Victor continued, "we can agree that both students made poor choices, that consequences will be minimal and equal, and that this will never happen again. Your choice." The Harrisons chose option 2. Afterward, in the car, Victor looked at Zora. Was hitting him the right choice? She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. That's an honest answer. He said things about Mama. About where I came from. About people dying in camps being good because it meant fewer." She stopped, her jaw tight. "I couldn't let him say those things. You could have walked away. Reported him. Found other ways to respond." "I know." Her voice was small. "But in the moment, I just wanted him to stop. To feel something. To understand that words have consequences." "Do you regret it?" Another long pause. "I regret that I couldn't control myself. I regret that I let him make me that angry." She looked at her bruised knuckles. "But I don't regret that he knows I'm not someone who can be attacked without response." Victor nodded slowly. "I've spent my entire life responding to attacks with violence. It's effective. It establishes boundaries. It makes people afraid to cross you. But it also becomes a habit. A reflex. You stop distinguishing between threats that require violence and threats that don't. Everything becomes a nail because all you have is a hammer." Zora considered this. "Is that what happened to you? You became all hammer?" "Yes. For a long time, I didn't even realize there were other tools. I just crushed everything that got in my way." He turned to face her. "I don't want that for you. You're capable of so much more than destruction. What if destruction is sometimes necessary? Then you use it. Sparingly. Carefully. And you never let yourself enjoy it." Victor's voice was heavy with the weight of things he could never take back. "The moment violence feels good, the moment crushing your enemy becomes satisfying instead of necessary, you've lost something you can't recover." "Have you lost it?" Victor thought about Hendrix. About the satisfaction he had felt watching the man's world collapse. "I'm fighting to get it back," he said finally. "Every day. And I'm losing sometimes. But I'm still fighting." Zora reached across the seat and took his hand. Her bruised knuckles against his scarred ones. "Then we'll fight together," she said. "We'll remind each other what we're supposed to be. Now we've reached the part of the story where everything changes. Not with a bang, but with a revelation. If you're still here, if you've been waiting to see what secret could tear these two apart, keep watching. Because the truth that's coming will test everything they've built." And now we return to where we began. Zora at 14. Standing in Victor's study. Holding the folder she had taken from his safe. "I know who my real father was. And I know you've been lying to me for 4 years." Victor stood behind his desk, the Manhattan skyline behind him, his hands useless at his sides. "You found his name," he said. "Not a question. I found everything." Her voice cracked. "The investigation you ran when I first came here. The report about who he was. The family he had in Senegal. The family I could have known about." "Zora. Don't explain. Don't justify." She held up her hand, his gesture, learned from him. "Just tell me one thing. Did you keep this from me to protect me? Or to keep me for yourself?" The question hung between them. The truth Victor had buried for 4 years, rising inexorably to the surface. "Both," he said finally. "I told myself it was protection. But it was also fear. Fear of what? Fear of losing you. The words came slowly, painfully, dragged from somewhere deep. Your father, your biological father, was a man named Amadou Diallo. He worked with your mother in the refugee camps. He was married to someone else, but he and Diana fell in love. When your mother became pregnant, Amadou wanted to leave his wife. Diana refused. She said she wouldn't build her happiness on someone else's pain. Zora's expression shifted. Something complicated moved behind her eyes. She raised me alone because she didn't want to hurt his family? She raised you alone because she believed it was right. Amadou died 3 years before you were born, a truck bomb at a humanitarian convoy. He never knew about you. Victor's voice steadied. His family is still in Senegal. A wife. 2 children. They don't know you exist. But you do. You've known for 4 years. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Victor walked to the window, unable to face her while he admitted the truth. Because I was afraid. When you came here, you were a disruption. A complication. I didn't know how to handle you. But then. He stopped, searching for words that would not excuse what he had done. Then you became my daughter. Not legally. Not biologically. But in every way that mattered. And I knew that if you found out about your father's family, you might want them instead of me. So you lied. I omitted. I told myself it wasn't lying because I never said your father was unknown. I just never mentioned that I knew exactly who he was. That's the same thing. Yes. Victor turned to face her. It's the same thing. And I was wrong. Zora was quiet for a long moment. The folder hung at her side, evidence of his betrayal. You said Mama sent me to you because she trusted you. But she also trusted you to tell me the truth. I know. You said Ashworths protect each other. But you weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself. I know. Then what do we do now? Victor crossed the room until he stood before her. His daughter. The child who had dismantled his defenses one truth at a time. Whatever you want. If you want to meet your father's family, I'll make it happen. If you want to stay with them, his voice broke. I'll let you go. You'd let me go? I would hate it. I would fight every instinct I have. But yes. Because what you need matters more than what I want. He swallowed. That's what love is. I didn't understand that before you. I do now. Zora studied him. For years of observation, for years of learning his tells, for years of watching him transform from the man her mother had despised into someone entirely different. I'm angry, she said finally. You have every right to be. I'm angry that you lied. That you decided what was best for me without asking. That you acted like I was something to be kept instead of someone to be respected. Yes. But, she stopped. Took a breath. You also saved me. When I came here, I was broken. I didn't trust anyone. I didn't believe anyone could love me without wanting something from me. And you proved me wrong. Not because you were perfect. Because you kept trying even when you failed. Victor said nothing. He didn't trust himself to speak. I want to meet them, Zora continued. My father's family. I want to know if I have siblings. I want to understand where I come from. I'll arrange it. But I'm not leaving. Her voice firmed. You're my father. Not Amadou. He died before he could be anything to me. You sat outside my door when I had nightmares. You learned to cook because I asked you to. You burned down your enemies when they threatened me, and then you worried about whether burning them had made you a monster. Zora. I'm not finished. She stepped closer, close enough to touch. You're going to earn my forgiveness. It's not going to be easy. I'm going to be angry for a while, and you're going to have to live with that. But I'm not leaving. Because this, she gestured at the space between them. This is real. This is family. And I don't throw away family just because they make mistakes. Victor felt tears on his face. He could not remember the last time he had cried. Decades, probably. He had trained himself to believe that tears were weakness, that emotion was liability. But looking at his daughter, this fierce, wounded, extraordinary young woman, he understood that everything he had believed was wrong. I'm sorry, he said. For lying. For being afraid. For not trusting you with the truth. I know. Zora reached up and wiped a tear from his cheek, his gesture, the one he had used when she was younger. Now we start over. No more secrets. No more deciding what I can handle. We're partners, or we're nothing. Partners. Good. She turned and walked toward the door. I'm going to my room now. I need to think. But tomorrow, we start planning. I want to meet my siblings. Siblings? Amadou's other children. If they're my father's, they're my family too. She looked back at him. That's how family works. It expands. It doesn't replace. Then she was gone, leaving Victor alone with the shattered remnants of his secrets and the beginning of something new. The trip to Senegal happened 3 months later. Victor had used every resource at his disposal to prepare. He had reached out to Amadou Diallo's widow, a woman named Mariama, through careful intermediaries. He had explained the situation, the daughter her husband had never known about, the child who wanted to meet her siblings. Mariama's response had been unexpected. I always wondered, she had said through the video call, her French accented with Wolof rhythms. Amadou spoke of Diana often. There was something in his voice when he said her name. I knew he loved her. I made peace with it long ago. You're not angry? Angry at a dead man? Angry at a woman who loved him enough to sacrifice her own happiness so that I could keep mine? Mariama had shaken her head. No. I am curious. I want to meet this child who carries his blood. My children want to meet their sister. Sister. The word had transformed everything. Now Victor sat in a hotel room in Dakar, waiting while Zora met her new family for the first time. She had asked to do it alone. He had respected that, though every instinct screamed at him to be present, to protect, to control. He was learning to let go. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Victor worked, but his attention kept drifting to his phone, waiting for word. Finally, at 6:47 p.m., a text arrived, * coming back to the hotel. Bring tissues, *. He met her in the lobby. Her eyes were red, her face swollen from crying, but she was smiling. Really smiling, in a way he had never seen before. They're wonderful, she said. Fatou is 17, she wants to be a doctor. Ibrahima is 15, he's obsessed with football and terrible at it. And Mariama, her voice caught. Mariama showed me pictures of him. Of my father. She told me stories. She let me see who he was. Are you all right? I'm better than all right. Zora grabbed his hands. I have a family. A bigger family. Not instead of you, in addition to you. I have siblings and a stepmother who wants to know me, and I. She stopped, overwhelmed. Victor pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. Not sad tears. Not painful tears. The tears of someone who had carried a weight alone and had finally found others to help bear it. Thank you, she whispered against his chest. For what? For letting me come here. For not being too afraid to let me find them. For trusting me to come back. I will always trust you. Victor's voice was rough with emotion. Even when it terrifies me. Zora pulled back, looking up at him with those eyes, Diana's eyes, their mother's eyes, and now something new. Something that belonged entirely to her. We're staying for 2 weeks, she announced. Mariama invited us to dinner tomorrow. She wants to meet you. Me? You're my father. She wants to know the man who raised me. Zora smiled. She said anyone who could turn Victor Ashworth into a decent human being must be remarkable. She said that? She said that Amadou used to talk about you. About the things you did. About how dangerous you were. Zora's smile widened. She's been following the news. She's seen the changes. The foundation. The reformed business practices. She said she wants to meet the man who chose to be different. Victor did not know what to say. He had never expected to be measured by the standards of a widow in Senegal, to be judged by a family whose existence he had tried to hide from his daughter. I'll do my best not to disappoint her, he managed. You won't. Zora squeezed his hands. You've spent 4 years proving that you can be more than what you were. This is just another opportunity. The dinner the next evening was one of the most challenging experiences of Victor's life. Mariama's home was modest but warm, filled with photographs and the smell of cooking and the chaos of family life. She greeted him at the door with a handshake and an assessing gaze that reminded him sharply of his daughter. Mr. Ashworth. Please. Call me Victor. Victor, then. She stepped aside to let him enter. Come. Meet my children. Meet Zora's siblings. The evening that followed was uncomfortable, awkward, and ultimately transformative. Fatou peppered him with questions about American medical schools. Ibrahima challenged him to a game he didn't understand and lost deliberately to make the boy feel confident. Mariama watched everything, saying little but missing nothing. And Zora sat at the center of it all, glowing with a happiness Victor had never seen in her before. She had found something she didn't know she was missing. A connection to her origins. A family that extended beyond the two of them. For a moment, watching her laugh with her siblings, Victor felt a flash of the old fear. What if this was what she really needed? What if he had been a placeholder, a temporary shelter until she found her real home? Then Zora looked at him across the table and smiled, a private smile, just for him, and he understood. Love wasn't about possession. It wasn't about being the only one. It was about wanting the other person to have everything they needed, even if that meant sharing them with the world. You are thinking very loudly, Mariama said, appearing beside him with a glass of tea. My apologies. Don't apologize. I understand. She sat down, her movements graceful despite her age. You are afraid of losing her. Yes. You will not lose her. She loves you. Mariama sipped her tea. I lost Amadou many years ago. First to Diana, to his love for her. And then to the bomb that took his life. I thought I would never recover. But I learned that love is not diminished by being shared. Zora can love you and love her siblings and love the memory of her father and love her mother's spirit, and none of those loves compete with each other. You're remarkably understanding about all of this. I have had 20 years to make peace with my husband's heart. Mariama smiled. And now I have a new daughter. An unexpected gift. Why would I be anything but grateful? Victor looked at this woman who had every right to resent him, to resent Diana, to resent the child who had appeared from nowhere to claim a connection to her family. Thank you, he said. For welcoming her. For letting her belong. Thank you for raising her. Mariama's eyes were kind. She told me stories about you. About the man you were when she arrived, and the man you have become. You gave her a home when she had nothing. You loved her when you didn't know how. She placed a hand on his arm. Amadou would have been grateful. Diana would have been grateful. And I am grateful. Victor had no words. He simply nodded, his throat too tight for speech. Across the room, Zora caught his eye and grinned. She looked younger than she had in years. Lighter. Free in a way she had never been before. This, Victor realized, was what it meant to be a parent. Not controlling. Not protecting from everything. But giving them wings and trusting them to fly. The flight home was quiet. Zora slept for most of it, exhausted by 2 weeks of emotion and connection and discovery. Victor watched her sleep and thought about everything that had changed. He had come to Senegal terrified of what he might lose. He was leaving with more than he had ever expected. A family. Extended and complicated and imperfect, but real. People who knew his daughter and would help him keep her connected to her roots. A widow who had forgiven what Victor could not have forgiven himself. And a daughter who had chosen, again and again, to stay. When they landed in New York, Zora stirred awake and looked at him with sleepy eyes. Home, she said. Home, he agreed. She smiled and took his hand, and they walked off the plane together. Epilogue. 5 years later. The Diana Ashworth Foundation's annual gala was the most anticipated charity event of the season. Dignitaries, celebrities, business leaders. Everyone who wanted to be seen supporting humanitarian causes made their appearance. But Victor Ashworth, founder and primary benefactor, was not watching the crowd. He was watching his daughter. Zora stood at the podium, 19 years old, poised and confident. She was wearing a dress she had designed herself, incorporating fabrics from Senegal that her siblings had sent. Her hair was elaborate, beautiful, unapologetically African. And she was commanding the room. My mother believed that trying was what made us human, she said, her voice carrying to every corner. She spent her life trying to help others, even when it cost her everything. She died trying. But her death was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of mine. Victor felt tears prick his eyes. He did not wipe them away. I was 10 years old when I lost her. I was broken, angry, terrified of a world that had taken everything from me. And then I met a man who had been told his entire life that he was a monster. The room was utterly silent. Victor Ashworth was not what I expected. He was cold. He was awkward. He burned things when he couldn't control them and hid from feelings he didn't understand. Zora smiled. But he tried. Every single day, he tried to be something different than what he had been. He failed sometimes. He made mistakes. But he never stopped trying. She found Victor in the crowd, and their eyes met. Tonight, we celebrate another year of impact. 80,000 children educated. 50,000 refugees resettled. Hundreds of communities transformed by investment in infrastructure and opportunity. These are numbers, but they represent lives. Real people who are safer, healthier, more hopeful because someone decided to try. She paused, letting the moment breathe. My father taught me that it's never too late to change. My mother taught me that trying is what makes us human. Together, they taught me that love, real love, the kind that transforms, requires both. The willingness to become something new, and the persistence to keep trying even when it's hard. She raised her glass. To the people we've helped. To the people we've lost. To the people we're becoming. And to trying, always trying, to be better than we were yesterday. The room erupted in applause. Victor stood with everyone else, clapping, but his eyes never left his daughter. Later, after the speeches and the donations and the endless handshakes, they found a quiet corner together. Father and daughter. The most dangerous billionaire alive and the child who had brought him to his knees. You were magnificent, Victor said. I learned from the best. Zora grinned. Both of them. The one who taught me to survive, and the one who taught me to fight. Your mother was the survivor. I just taught you to be ruthless. You taught me to be strategic. There's a difference. She leaned against his shoulder. Fatu is graduating medical school next month. Ibrahima got a football scholarship. Mariama sends her love. Family, Victor said quietly. Family. Zora smiled. It grows if you let it. They stood together, watching the city through the windows. The same city Victor had once viewed as a conquest, a board to dominate. Now he saw it differently. People. Lives. Possibilities. Are you happy? Zora asked suddenly. Victor considered the question. It was not something he would have known how to answer 5 years ago. Happiness had not been in his vocabulary. Yes, he said finally. I am. Good. Zora squeezed his hand. That's all Mama would have wanted. For both of us. They stayed there for a long time, watching the lights of the city. Two people who had found each other in the wreckage of loss. Two people who had built something neither of them expected. Family. Love. Redemption. Not the ending Victor had imagined for himself. But the one he had earned. And that's the story. A tale of the most dangerous man alive, brought to his knees by a little girl who demanded he become something better. If this story moved you, if you felt something watching these two find each other against all odds, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what moment stayed with you. Was it the nightmare that changed everything, the confrontation over the secret, or the dinner in Senegal where a widow offered forgiveness? Every story I tell is for you, the listeners who come back week after week looking for something real. Something that makes you feel. I hope this gave you that. Thank you for watching Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson. I'll see you in the next one.